It's now 7 o'clock. The board is back into open session. Kathy, are there any public comments? Do any board members have any changes to the agenda?
No.
Seeing as there are none, Mr. Gatz.
Sorry, it's a unique setup. The other side of the room. Good evening, everybody. We're just going back from spring break and getting students situated back into the buildings. Students in 3rd through 5th grade started IAR testing this week, so certainly that's something we want to get finished as quickly as we can and get back to the business as usual, but it's something we have to take care of every year. After school today at Central, the artists in residence is starting next week. Erica Vizena and her painter were here, and they began prepping the wall where we're going to be putting a very sizable mural in the main hallway here at Central. That's been the opportunity has been afforded to us due to the Central PTO, so I definitely want to thank them for helping make that happen. Every student's going to have an opportunity to participate in creating that mural during their art class this coming week. So over the course of the next couple of weeks, we should see the mural start to take shape. And then also today after school, we had the first of 2 days of auditions for the Central Talent Show. It's not an audition to be part of it, just to make sure you put something, kind of thought about it a little bit ahead of time, with some organization and creativity to it. But we're looking forward to that talent show in a couple of weeks. And then later this month, we have all the district band, chorus, and orchestra concerts. There's a lot going on in April. We're really excited to see all these things happen. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I think I got a little ahead of myself. We do not have a superintendent report today.
Correct, this is because it's committee of the whole, so yeah.
We are now into committee reports. Mr. Barsati?
So I'll let, so there's a few things on here. I know we got a presentation, but just to sort of talk about the Salt Creek Valley Transportation, I know Jim put up together a memo here. I don't know if he wants to talk about it, but
Jim, do you want to? They're so far away.
yeah. But the long and the short is that we're still having trouble finding reliable and permanent transportation for the sporting events.
Yeah.
We don't have enough business that they
Right.
not gonna
So-
worry about us.
So I guess I was wondering, so is the message of this memo essentially we're going to continue doing the thing with parents? Is that?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, that's all we have right now.
And we've just agreed to keep you all up to date. I know it's not the preferred method, but also having a bus company that's unreliable is not the preferred method. So we're in a bind here, Barrett.
Yeah.
Well, I think the parents are much more reliable, as you said, and definitely having kids who missed events and were late to events for bus company mess-ups. If the parents are willing, and I appreciate that they are, that's probably the best route to continue.
Maybe get a larger fan base there too.
Well, April and Chris have shared that, parents, I think we had one parent express concern. They thought we were maybe doing it as a way to save money, which really is not a way to save money. It's really our best, most reliable option. But I think many parents do enjoy it. They're going to the games anyway, happy to take a small group of kids. And so I absolutely, Dan, your point's well. We very much appreciate it.
Still very much remember the pet parade. I forget what year, but the pet parade where the bus company never showed up at all. And so you had a bunch of people ready to march in a big parade and just couldn't go.
Martha, do you know how big our largest teams are that need to be shuttled?
I would think soccer's our largest team. Again, just making a good guess. So it would. I don't know that we ever fill a full-size bus, but getting the smaller buses is equally as problematic.
I was more gauging, like, how many parents do we have to rely on?
Oh, I gotcha. I can certainly find out for everybody.
And then I'm going to turn it over to Don because we've got a technology roadmap. So.
Thank you, Mr. Barsati.
You're welcome.
Good evening. It's kind of that time of year again for the technology roadmap. The presentation may look a little familiar. It's just been updated since the last one, but it'd be easy to follow that way. Going to be covering the same areas that we traditionally talked about, kind of talk about different environments in terms of where our resources are, connectivity and infrastructure, our premise network hardware that we have here, our devices, safety and security, and then our web and social media presence. So the first area, just covering our environments, local premise, hybrid, cloud.
Supposed to be on Zoom.
She's there.
She's there, okay.
So just to kind of summarize what all this is really saying here in our different environments is the vast majority of our resources are in the cloud. And that trend will likely continue. And that even some of the things that we currently run in a virtual environment, technically in the cloud, on an Azure server, like our access control systems, and actually over at Hauser, their intercom system, that as we move to different systems, those will really truly be purely cloud-based, and those virtual environments will go away. But doing so, it obviously also means that we're very dependent on our internet connectivity. But with the critical systems that we have out there, they're being backed up in our different environments, and really it's more of a protection from some type of cybersecurity type event. But in the event of anything like that, we do have everything in our critical systems backed up. So this is really just a summary of the things that we've completed, which were things that were on schedule to complete. Again, we've just been moving stuff off site. Like our phone system is currently in the cloud now. And then as we're looking to move our security cameras, that will be a cloud-based system. Our access control, while technically it is in the cloud in the sense that we don't have it on a local server, it'll be truly out of our environment completely once a new solution is selected. And the same thing with the intercom system. As far as connectivity and infrastructure, as planned, we doubled our internet bandwidth for our primary services this year. So we did move from Comcast as being our provider to AT&T through the Illinois Century Network. Now, what Illinois Century Network is a state-funded entity. So what ends up happening is the state picks up part of it through E-rate, the Fed picks up the other part, and we essentially have we are paying $0 for that for our primary internet connectivity. What we did add, and what we do pay for, is a 500 meg failover backup through Comcast, so that in the event that our main connectivity goes down, it automatically kicks over to our redundant system. Also within this, I've just also added that in our data closets, we do have about 10 to 15 hours of backup power in our data closets just through uninterrupted power supplies, UPSs. We're in the process of replacing those. It's been about 5 years. Batteries start to fail, and we're doing some this year and budgeting more for next year.
So do we have much equipment that needs to be backed up there?
It's all backed up or powered up?
Not backed up, I'm sorry, for power up.
It's really just our switches, which then also powers our wireless access points and any other PoE devices that we have, our phones and so forth. So in the event of an outage, even if we lose power, what that ensures is that we have wireless. Most people are using battery-operated devices, so they can go as long as their battery can go on their device. But phones remain up, and wireless connectivity remains up. So those systems so even if the power is out, again, depending on the timing of the outage. So if the outage happened right after school one day, and it persisted through the morning of the next day, then we might be running into more of a critical issue with being able to maintain that power.
And you need all that power to run the locally present security stuff that's on PoE, right?
It's all that switch hardware, so the switches and the routers that connect the schools and then also connect us to our internet connection, to our internet service providers. So that's really primarily what we have on premise now. We're essentially purely switches and routers, and then the PoE devices that power off of those, which are primarily phones and wireless access points. So in talking about that premise network hardware, the switch hardware is due to be cycled in fiscal year 30. Okay. Now, some expansion might be required as we add additional IP-based systems. Okay, so the chances are the intercom system is going to be IP-based. So then we have to look at if additional ports are needed, possibly need switches. A lot of the new systems, they come with kind of these intermittent switches that are maybe put in hallways that connect it. So it's not actually anything in our data closet, but there are switches that are just part of the system. But if there were other switches that needed to be in our data closets because of some type of expansion or use of IP-based products, then you could see some need to expand, like the number of ports that we have available. The wireless network is scheduled for replacement this summer, and it's on the agenda to talk a little bit more about after this, and we'll get more detail there. Our devices and classroom tech, this is an area where, as with a lot of the areas that we purchase in tech, we don't have a flat cycle. You know, we have peaks and troughs in terms of what our needs are relative to purchasing, because items can be on a 5-year, 7-year, depending on the type of equipment, it's a different purchasing cycle. So we have these different cycles running. But we do have some larger cycles coming up. In 27 and 28, we have, at our elementary schools, the Chromebook replacements, those run a 5-year cycle, but we staggered them as half of the elementaries, so Central and Hollywood are 1 year, the first year, and then the second year were Ames and Blythe, so they were split and staggered that way. Also, our classroom AV, our projectors, they're getting to that 7-year, 8-year-old mark, which is when we traditionally have looked to, well, that's when things start to fail. Now, we do annual preventative maintenance on this equipment, so where we change the filters, which really does help to prolong the life. So it's very rare that we have had any level of a failure of a device. Occasionally a lamp goes out, but the last ones we had did last about 8 years, 9 years before we replaced them. But these are things that are going to be coming up on the horizon in the next 3 years. But with this, and also with our staff devices, we have kind of a peak in terms of when some staff devices are coming up for replacement that are kind of out of the norm where it's in that cycle. We go from replacing 30, 50, 60 devices to then like 150. It's just it's just how our purchasing cycles run traditionally. But I have been in communication with the business office and Jim and Mihaela, and just letting them know in terms of forecasting that these things are coming down the pipe. In terms of safety and security, we continue to use on-site and off-site content filtering for students. There is a need to review and update our internet safety curriculum. So that is something that is probably more near term in the next year or so. And then, as you know, the upcoming security projects are very likely to require a structured cabling project, which that's currently out with the engineers right now, and we'll hope to have some more information on that in the coming weeks. And then finally, our web and social media presence. We launched a new website and a companion app this year. Feedback thus far has been positive. Things are just really be status quo on that. It is more integrated with our social media. So I think overall, from a community standpoint, I think we're in a good position there. And that is it. Any questions?
So I was wondering, it sounds like E-rate came up a few times. Given things, is there any issues with that so far?
Everything that I'm hearing is that it will continue. Mm-hmm. Now, the question has always been, E-rate kind of runs in 5-year cycles, in which they get approval for 5 years. What has typically changed is, well, what is now allowable? as, for some level of a subsidy. It used to be that used to be phone service was qualified to be, that went away. And then the heavy focus was on, internet and your network infrastructure. I don't see that going away because there are areas that are still so highly dependent on those resources to maintain that connectivity in their schools and libraries. Where I see maybe them shifting some dollars is towards cybersecurity and services at that level, but it's still TBD.
So shifting money towards those services.
Yes, because that is now, that becomes a vulnerability for all organizations. But that is also an area where, K-12 is not necessarily, the primary focus isn't on, it's always a focus, but it's not like we don't staff a cybersecurity. It's usually, it's largely consulted. It's how you design or structure your infrastructure. Don't want to get too much into that. But yes, it's, I just see that could be a direction that it goes. But that's just, that's directors talking to each other.
But also from what you've said, we've got so much that's cloud-based and being hosted by such large organizations that we benefit from that, right?
Definitely. Because it's not, we don't, but we still have, for instance, what would be a vulnerability would be like our Google environment. Now, that could be, if there's some level of a, ransomware, malware, but that is also why we have those systems backed up. Those are systems that we pay for to have it backed up. So, could it be that E-rate will then cover part of those costs to make sure that you're positioned so that in the event something happens, you can get up and running fairly quickly and that your data's protected.
So you mentioned that we have a failover for a Comcast line, whereas we're doing the AT&T line for primary. Have we had to use failover anytime recently?
Anytime we do, it's like for a few minutes. Yeah, so far the AT&T connectivity's been, pretty stable. But it's something that, it's our insurance policy that if we had any amount of time, and really it is, we did some testing with it where it didn't even interrupt the failover process didn't interrupt a phone call. And in some instances it did, but some instances it didn't. So it's fairly, depending on how, I'm not sure what the variable that where we didn't even lose connectivity, but it's pretty quick. So typically it's going to be something that is pretty transparent to the end user that it actually occurred. But in some instances, they may get a drop call. I think that would be the biggest thing. Right? Maybe a page, if they're loading a page at that time, maybe it takes a second longer. But drop call would probably be the only indicator of a failure.
So one point I didn't see in the presentation, there was anything about any preparations for AI or any kind of additional needs coming down the pike?
We have some things that are, I think it's going to come out of more of the Ed Committee.
Okay.
But I know myself, Angela, and Chris Harvalis have been working with some teachers to come up with some guidelines, and we kind of have an AI group, not a formal committee, but we're developing some guidance, and then also looking to identify what resources might be needed in the future. So. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
I think I'm up next. Yeah.
Yes, another one, yes.
We need an introduction, just go into it. So this is,
Yeah, Joel, I don't know, but this,
You had presented some of this before.
this here,
I thought you, or not this, but the next one.
I did when we purchased it like 8 years ago.
Oh, I thought you had discussed.
We did discuss it in the last time I presented this. that it was coming. Because the last time I presented this, it was technically last fiscal year, but it was like a year and a half, because it was, I think it was fall of '23. Okay, so it was more towards the beginning of the fiscal year, whereas now this is more at the end. So it's been like a year and a half, but it was brought up then, at that time, that it was coming down the pipe. And so now it's here. So, the information that was presented, it's a project that's currently planned for this coming summer. It's partially subsidized by the federal E-rate program and was vetted under those programs' requirements. Originally, it was presented in August of 2023 as part of the FY24 tech roadmap. The project replaces equipment originally installed in 2017. So we got some good life out of the equipment for the wireless access points. It does bring our wireless network up to current Wi-Fi 6 wireless standards. The solution encompasses the hardware, software, implementation services, and 5 years of product maintenance and support. There were a total of 4 responses to the request for proposal through E-rate. Of the 4 proposals, 2 of the responses were for our incumbent provider, which is Cisco Meraki Wireless Networks. We had one for Aruba Networks and one for Ruckus. Proposals were evaluated and scored based on 4 criteria. We did price, which through E-rate, price always has to be the one that's most weighted. Understanding of the district's needs, prior experience, and continuity, interoperability with our existing infrastructure. So based on that, we are recommending continuing on with Cisco Meraki. It's worked well for us. No need to at least make a change at this point. The project cost, post E-rate rebates, will be about $107,000. That's after the discounts through E-rate. The project details were reviewed with the Finance Committee in March and also with the incoming Director of Technology. And we'll be seeking board approval at the next meeting to move forward with it.
So you mentioned that we currently have Cisco Meraki. I guess it's not the lowest cost on this list. I didn't know what was it just the fact that we have the Cisco Meraki hardware and we're familiar with it? Does that outweigh the others?
We're what you kind of call a full stack Meraki environment, in that we're kind of end to end on our network. So it's one pane of glass of management. Not that you can't have different systems but we also, I talked to Martha about it, talked to Molly about it. It's a transitional period. Like, do we want to make a change at this point in time? Again, it's treated us well in the sense that we've gotten a lot of years out of it. Their product support and with all our equipment, when we did have, unbeknownst to really the people around, well, except I think Martha did, but for instance, we had a failure of one of our network switches at Hollywood about a month and a half ago. It happened at about 7:30 at night, and we're here till about 1 in the morning, just moving things off of that switch so that come morning, everything was up and running. And again, very transparent to the end users. They didn't know that anything had gone down, and the device was here within 24 hours, and then we had new equipment up and running. So again, there's a level of security and confidence with the product, and it's also very easy to configure and manage. So that's just some big positives to it.
How many pizzas were consumed that night?
0.
0. Wow. I'm impressed.
No, actually, and Charles was there too. He was there too.
He's like wishing he'd had the pizza.
It's like, you're holding out.
I didn't know it was an option.
Any other questions? Hearing none, seeing none. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and I know Marlo is on Zoom. Marlo, I'm happy to jump in. I believe next one is Education Committee, right? I'm sorry, don't mean to
No,
jump in
you're-
front of you.
That's okay.
Oh, that's okay. I was gonna say we'll kick it to Angela, who's gonna give an update on our 2 new curriculum. We've had the Amplify CKLA and Mystery Science, as well as an update on the World Cafe that the 5th through 8th graders participated in.
All right, thank you, Marla. Good evening, everybody. So as Marla said, I'm going to give a brief update on Amplify CKLA, the implementation of our new language arts resource, Amplify Core Knowledge Language Arts, and also an update on, a brief update on Mystery Science, our new science curriculum. So these are the things I'll talk about. Just a brief overview of the Amplify CKLA program, the impact it's had on student learning using student growth data, the impact on student learning using student reflections as well as staff reflections, and then our next steps for CKLA. I'll also give an overview of Mystery Science and the impact again of Mystery Science on student learning given student reflections, and the impact of Mystery Science on staff instruction given staff reflections. So starting with Amplify CKLA is a Tier 1 curriculum, which means that it's a curriculum that we're working to shore up and have a strong curriculum for all students. If you think about the MTSS model with Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 services, Tier 1 is for everybody. And so the theory behind Amplify CKLA is that if you have a strong Tier 1 resource, less students will need Tier 2 and Tier 3 support, and that's the basis of this program. It's a dual strand model, which is different than most language arts curricular resources. Most language arts curricular resources have literature, whether it's informational text or it's fiction-based text, that they use and then incorporate different skills when teaching those texts. With Amplify CKLA, it's a deliberate dual strand model where there is deliberate systemic instruction on foundational skills. There's a process as well as a path for those foundational skills that are being taught from kindergarten through 2nd grade and then integrated into the instruction in 3rd through 5th grade. And then there's the content-rich knowledge strand, which builds from grade level to grade level. So for instance, kindergartners will learn about the 5 senses in one of their CKLA domains. And then in 1st grade, they'll learn about nutrition. And then in a subsequent grade, they learn about the human body systems. And so it continues to go on and builds on what they learned previously. CKLA is has a dedicated focus to listening comprehension in our primary grades, which is a change in instructional mindset for many teachers. Usually you would see with most curricular resources, primary students who have books in hand reading all the time from some type of book, whether it's a textbook, a basal, or a novel, they're reading from that book. But the focus on listening comprehension with CKLA is done because students can comprehend at a higher level when listening rather than when trying to decode. So by focusing on listening comprehension, our primary students are exposed to higher vocabulary, higher content knowledge in the primary grades without getting caught on the decoding of words in those areas. There's still books in hand when they're using decodables to practice their skill-based knowledge, and they're still responding to text with those decodables. But for listening comprehension skills, for comprehension skills at the primary grade level, a lot of it is done with the teacher or with the text reading the story to the kids with a picture card shown while they're reading it, and kids answering questions based on what's being read to them. Writing tasks are integrated in both strands for both skills and knowledge. So again, kids are responding to what they're reading, but there's also writing built into those skills lessons that they're learning. They're focused on phonics and phonemic awareness. So when looking at how we're doing with growth, we, as you know, assess students in the fall, the winter, and the spring. And in first kindergarten through 5th grade, we assess using FastBridge. And then in 2nd through 8th grade, but for this purpose, 2nd through 5th grade, we assess students using MAP. So what you see here is this first slide, primary student growth. And what it looks at is kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd grade growth. And for kindergarten and 1st grade, what I looked at was students' growth for FastBridge early reading testing, because they don't do MAP reading. And then what I looked at was second grade math testing. And you see the percentage of students in kindergarten, first, and second grade who are above grade level, at grade level, below grade level, and then well below grade level. And what that translates to in MTSS is our tier 3 would be well below grade level, our students receiving tier 2 services would be below grade level, and our at grade level and above grade level are tier 1 students. The blue and red bars show our data from last school year when we were still using ReadyGen. The yellow and green bars show our data from this year using CKLA for the first part of this year, from our fall benchmarking to our winter benchmarking. So what you can see here is when you look at that above grade level piece for the yellow and green bars from the fall of this year to the winter of this year with CKLA, we've had the largest amount of growth in all the areas in all the years. And that says a lot about our foundational skills learning that's happening in our primary grade levels right now. Specifically at our kindergarten grade level, where that percentage in the fall was 86% of our students being at or above grade level, and in the winter becoming 90% of our students being at or above grade level. So 90% of our kindergartners are at or above grade level, and when you compare that to the year before with ReadyGen, at the winter term, 84% of our kindergartners were at or below grade level at that point. So 90% using CKLA, 84% when we were using ReadyGen. So just a comparison there for you. So it's really showing that the foundational skills are being taught and it's making a difference at that primary level. You can also see that the well below grade level decreased from the fall 24 to the winter 25. And the below grade level increased, but that's going to happen when your tier 3 students are moving out of tier 3. They're going to move usually to tier 2 and then to tier 1. So you would expect a slight increase at tier 2 if you're seeing a decrease at tier 3. But looking at intermediate student growth, you don't see the same type of growth happening at the intermediate level. Part of that, though, is because these are the students who are jumping into a program in the middle of that programming. So those kindergartners now, who have 90% at or above grade level, as they progress through the program in subsequent years, their student growth is going to continue to grow because they've been in the program from ground one, like from the first part in kindergarten. But these 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders are jumping in right now. And some of the material is more complex for them. Some of the material is new material for them because they didn't have those previous years of the knowledge building because they're just starting it for the first time this year. Some of their decoding may not be where it would be if they'd been in the program the whole time because we didn't have a systematic instructional practice for teaching phonics in previous years with ReadyGen. We were doing many different things. But now we're all doing the same thing with the same steps, and that wasn't happening across the district previously with ReadyGen because ReadyGen didn't have a solid phonics program. We also now with CKLA teach more grammar and morphology, which is word structure, looking at prefixes, suffixes, root words, and so forth, and that's something that wasn't happening before. So these are all things that the kids who are starting in their primary years with ReadyGen, when they get to the intermediate years, they're going to have that knowledge when they get there. But our current 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders are just plopped into this program, and so they're working off of their previous knowledge, which came from a different program. So you're not going to see the same type of growth in this beginning of the implementation of CKLA that you see at the primary level. I asked our staff to just send me reflections on how has CKLA impacted their instruction? And I won't read, I have 6 of them here, 3 on this slide, 3 on the next slide. I won't read them to you because you are all very capable of reading. But I will summarize that, not just these 6, but most of the staff members who responded, the things that have come up are some staff members, it's very time intensive. Everyone agrees it's time intensive. It takes a lot of time to plan for instruction. But you will have some staff members who feel that that's been hard for them and possibly a negative for them, the amount of time it takes to plan. And then there are some who have said, like, this has really helped me be more focused on my instruction and use my time better. So I feel that a lot of that is based on, it's a new program, it's a new style, it's a new mindset, and so change is always hard. And also, if you don't know exactly how to use all the pieces of a resource, it takes more time to do it. So as we continue through the program in subsequent years, it's going to get better. And I'll continue to work with the staff and reflect with the staff on if it is getting better and how I can continue to support them. Other things that have come up are appreciating just the structure with phonics instruction, appreciating the structure with morphology lessons, appreciating that there are writing assignments almost daily. There are some staff members who don't feel there's enough writing, so that's something that I'll address in our next steps. And there are staff members who have acknowledged that the text complexity is higher and the questions on assessments are harder. And that's what we want. We want a high rigorous curriculum. And it's our job then to help our students and support our students in being able to meet that bar. So these are the other 3 of the 6 staff reflections. Just give you a second. Oh, and then another concern, and a valid concern, is that CKLA is 120, it's supposed to be 120 minutes of instruction, kindergarten through 3rd grade, and 90 minutes at 4th through 5th grade. And our teachers do feel that 120 minutes, 2 hours, is a long time for students to sit for instruction, and they get bored. Not bored necessarily, well, some of them said bored when you see that on the next slide. But they do, it's hard to keep kids engaged for 2 hours. And I mean, we all know that. It is hard to keep kids engaged for 2 hours. It would be hard for us to sit for 2 hours and listen to someone teach to us or talk to us. And so, in talking with the principals and looking at scheduling, we're looking at how can we break up those 120 minutes so that it doesn't feel, it's not 2 straight hours, or it doesn't feel like it's this long block. Are we breaking it up with specials? Are we breaking it up with a recess? Is it breaking up with lunch? But how are we still having the 120 minutes at primary, but giving it, chunking it so that it's not feeling like it's a long, intensive time of English language arts instruction? Here are things that different students said about CKLA. The good, and some of them feel it's boring. That's what I was saying, some feel it's boring. Boring because they already know it, or it's like there's one student says it's their least favorite because they need help with it, right? So, but a lot of kids who like the content, who you'll see kindergartners at the time that they were asked, the kindergartens across the district were learning about the farm, or about farms, and so a lot of kindergarten comments were about liking pigs and liking that they learned ducks quack, and they like to learn about farms. Older kids have talked about that they've liked different content. You see a 3rd grade student there like the Roman unit and the light and sound unit. So the kids enjoy the topics, but like I said, the text complexity is harder and the questions are hard, and so we want to continue to work on that with our kids too. So our next steps, given the student growth data, given the staff reflections, given the student reflections, right now, primary instruction should be 120 minutes. That's how you should be able to do it. This year we did primary, everybody, K through 5, was only 90 minutes of instruction. And what our primary teachers and the instructional coaches have said is that it's too hard to get through everything. You can't. And they were feeling that they weren't going to cover everything, and that was causing a lot of stress for them. So we're looking at, the principals and I are looking at how can we increase instruction to 120 minutes, but like I said, blocking it. So it's scheduled throughout the day. It's not a straight 120 minutes, but how are we blocking it so that it's not too long for both teachers and students? We're also looking at alignment of assessments, including removing Fontes and Pinnell. We're not going to have that assessment as part of one of our benchmarking assessments because it doesn't fit with the Amplify philosophy. So we're going to remove that. And then we're also looking at what assessments does Amplify have us doing at the beginning, middle, and end of the year that FastBridge is also doing at the beginning, middle, and end of the year, and what can we remove so that we're not having that overlap. Because we also know that we do have a lot of different assessments, and so we want to figure out how can we take some of those out. We're going to have continued professional development on writing instruction with both CKLA consultants as well as our instructional coaches. And we're going to have continued professional development on meeting our higher students' needs from our instructional coaches. And then next year, we're going to do what's called learning labs, where we'll have a teacher, it's similar to, for those who have been around with MCMI, when we worked with the MCMI consultants for math. we would have one teacher teach a math lesson while half the grade level watch that teacher with the MCMI consultant. And then we'd go back and debrief and talk about what we saw, what worked, what didn't work, suggestions from the consultant, from the team, about improvements we can make or things we could do differently. We're going to do that same structure with CKLA. And so working with the CKLA consultant, we'll have teachers observing other teachers in our district teach, and then come back and debrief about what's working, where do we need assistance. The consultant will help us with that place that we need assistance, and working to have that actual one-on-one or that group dialogue on how we can continue to improve our instruction in CKLA. So now I'm going to move on to mystery science, but before I do you have any CKLA questions? Okay. So the mystery science is our other new curricular resource. It's an inquiry-based science curriculum, which means that it's based on having students answer some type of question. It's aligned to the next generation science standards, and the key features are that it has an anchor phenomena and a real-world connection. So for instance, one grade level might have a starting point of how are volcanoes formed. And that's what the whole unit's going to be on, is learning about how volcanoes are formed. There's a 3-part lesson structure where it starts with a video, or it starts with a question, then a video, then the lesson. And there's also extensions to that lesson if teachers want to partake in that. There's hands-on learning in each unit, so that students are able to work with different materials, whether it's pieces of paper or it's sand or it's sugar cubes. I know there was a lesson where one of the grade levels were shaking sugar cubes to simulate erosion. So there are different types of hands-on learning that go with each of the units as well. And one of the big things is the ease of use. Knowing that we were implementing a huge reading curricular resource this year, we knew that we did not want to implement a huge science resource as well. So it's nice that this is a very easy resource for teachers to utilize and plan with. And our teachers have thought that too. You can see the second reflection is that it's easy to use and requires minimal preparation. Our teachers like the mini lessons because it allows classes to learn cool things. It is engaging, includes a lot of real life examples and videos. Also really appreciate that it provides all the materials in Spanish. So everything that's in English is also in Spanish. So it makes it accessible for our Spanish speaking students, and they're able to participate fully in what's happening with the lesson. And one of our teachers had said, and I really like this, that every lesson is a mystery where they use science to figure out the answers to that mystery. And then just a few reflections from students. And you can see there are all the positive reflections that they're really enjoying it. Talk about maybe specific lessons that they've done, but just that they really enjoy the hands-on pieces and the projects that they're learning as well. And so that's the curricular update. Any questions on that area?
Does the CKLA have any Spanish component to it?
It does. So our EL teachers they have a separate series called Caminos. So they use Caminos to teach our TBI and TB programs. With TBI, it's more supplemental to what's happening in the classroom. With TB, it's a separate Spanish language arts curriculum, and then they also have access to the English language arts curriculum too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The intermediate student growth in with the CKLA program, you sort of downplayed the growth that we've seen there, but it does seem like there's some students at grade level or above grade level or higher than what they were last winter.
Yes, there definitely is growth, and I didn't mean to downplay it. When I was talking to the principals about it and talking to Marlo, I did point it out. I don't know why I didn't tonight, but yes, there is still growth. You're absolutely right, and you can see that at grade level is, at and above grade level still shows growth compared to before we were using CKLA. You can see that again, we decreased at well below grade level and also decreased at below grade level because of the growth you see at grade level. So yes, thank you for pointing that out. There is still growth with the intermediate level too.
Good. I think it seems really encouraging.
It is, and I know that once we continue to get used to the lessons, get used to the unit, get used to the program, that it's just going to continue to show positive outcomes. And everybody I talk to who's in year 2 or year 3 of implementation does say it gets easier from that first year. Even, Erin Dwyer, who's going to be our Hollywood principal, her current school's in their second year, and during her interview, she even said, it gets better, trust me, it gets better. So, just looking forward to when we get over that hump of the implementation of that first year.
And we think a curriculum is generally supportable for 4 or 5 years.
At least.
We've had these discussions multiple times, but I thank you.
Yes, yep. And you want to give it that long just because of how long it takes to get used to the curriculum too.
Well, and that's
You
part
wouldn't
of
want
why.
to start switching it in year 3 once people are starting to feel comfortable.
And that's kind of why I'm asking. So,
Yeah.
I mean, once you've learned it, and this seems to be so good, that if there's a way to extend it with whatever resources they provide, it might be worth it.
Right, yep. All right. So then we'll talk about World Cafe. All right, so what we'll talk about with World Cafe was the purpose for World Cafe, how it was structured, who participated, and then what the data has told us so far, as well as our next steps. The purpose of World Cafe was to gather student insight into their experiences and perspectives. And so what we did to do that is we had a free-flowing dialogue in response to 3 questions. And by free-flowing, that means the facilitator, who was a staff member with a group of anywhere between 5 to 10 students, would give the kids a question, and the kids were able to just say their answers and give their answers. And so some staff members typed verbatim what kids said, and some staff members paraphrased what kids said, but we got the general idea of what every group was saying as feedback, and then analyzed that data. We did 5th through 8th grade students, so 5th graders at all 4 elementary schools, and then we did 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Every grade level had about an hour, and they were divided into smaller groups. So at the junior high, we took about an hour with 6th graders, divided up into small groups of 5 to 10 students with one facilitator at the group, asking the questions and kids giving their answers, and the facilitators typing the answers in. The 3 questions we asked, everybody, 5th through 8th grade, every group got the same 3 questions. What do you like most about your school? What do you wish were different about your school? Then in what ways does your school do a good job in making you feel safe and welcome? And also it should have said, in what ways could we do a better job of making you feel safe and welcome? And then the 3rd question is, what is something you would like us to know? And it was actually not an hour, it was about 45 minutes, because they spent about 10 minutes on each of those questions. So everybody was to participate. If those numbers do not match attendance, it's because someone was probably absent on that day. But we had, we didn't adjust. We had groups for our Spanish-speaking students were led by our EL teachers. Students who might have had special education accommodations and needed more processing time, or might need visuals or something, we ensured that they had those resources as well. But then all the other groups were random groups of students put together. And you can see that when we were finished, we had 760 students who participated 5th through 8th grade, and out of those 760 kids were divided into 91 different groups. So when we analyzed the data for 5th grade, what are 5th graders like most? They have positive feelings towards the welcoming and kind nature of teachers and staff. They feel that they have a positive learning environment. They enjoy the availability of various activities such as lunch, recess, sports, and clubs. They will also say that they wish there were more sports and clubs and longer lunch and recess, but they do enjoy it. They appreciate the efforts they see of making the school environment safe and secure. And then what students wish were different. They wish that there was a change in the structure and content of the school day. And that change in structure for 5th graders is just that they wish ELA wasn't so long. They wish that there was more science. They wish recess and lunch were longer. And they wish that there was more social studies also. They wish there were better playground facilities. And we dug into that because we wanted to know which schools were saying that. And surprisingly, it was Ames and Central that said that, and it's things like that they wish there wasn't rust on the playground, and I guess one of the playgrounds have rust. The spinner at Central is fun, but they're worried that it might be a little bit dangerous if you fall off. So it was things like that that came up with better playground facilities. They wish there were more comfortable learning spaces, and by that they were talking about flexible seating. So wishing they had more wobble chairs or cushions to sit on, or the reclining pillow things there in some of the rooms. Fairness with access to green space and playground equipment. There are rotations at different schools on who can use the fields or who can use the playground. And so, you know, at one school, the kids who play football get a certain part of the green area, and the kids who play soccer get another area, and the soccer kids feel it's too muddy and they don't think it's fair, and the girls feel the boys always get the green fields at one school, but the girls always get the muddy area and they don't feel that's fair. And then I know at one school, the younger kids get the playground, but the older kids get the field space, and so the older kids are like, we want the playground too. And the younger kids get the playground, but they can also go to the field space, and they're like, well, if we can't have the playground, they shouldn't be on the field. So that's like the fairness piece. And all the schools have their individual pieces, their individual data. So they're gonna be able to look at this, and they're gonna be able to work with their leadership teams at their buildings to talk about these very things, to figure out how to better allocate those spaces so that people feel that it's more fair. And then they're looking for consistent rule enforcement. There were comments that they just feel some teachers enforce certain rules with certain people, but maybe not with others. And as a leadership team, we talked about, you know, that might be happening, but what they also might be saying is just there are different expectations of different students. And so they might be seeing a student that they feel is not getting a certain consequence that they feel they should get, but it's what's appropriate for that kiddo. So that was something that we talked about as a leadership team as well. For fifth graders across all 4 schools, they like the presence of safety patrols, the locked doors, our visitor protocols, and that teachers and staff greet them by their name. They would like to see an improved supervision in certain areas, like more people outside during lunch, recess in certain spots. They have some ideas on how we can revise our safety drills to be more effective. Things like if we put blinds over the windows on the doors that have windows, they'd like blinds on those. One group had said that they'd like ladders for 2nd and 3rd floor classrooms so that if there's a fire, they can get out the window if they need to. So they just offered different ideas for us to think about for safety drills. They'd like us to address bullying, and you'll probably see you'll see bullying throughout this presentation. I want to point out that it's not bullying, it's what kids call bullying, but it's really social conflict. So they feel that we could better address social conflict. They want to ensure all students feel included and supported. Some groups had talked about that they feel not all kids are welcomed into groups with friends. And then they're looking for more mental health support. And that was something that we also dug into, wondering what exactly that meant for 5th graders. And it's also on the junior high one too, more mental health support. And what that is comments like, I want to see a social worker, but I don't get to. Or I've asked to see a psychiatrist, a psychologist, or a social worker, but I'm dismissed, or I'm not given that opportunity. Or a lot of people get to see a social worker, but not everybody sees a social worker. We'd like a group for kids who have troubles, like who have experienced trouble like divorce or depression, or they had named a whole bunch of different things, and have some type of group that kids can sign up for but don't have to have their parents sign them up. So there is some need that our students are expressing 5th through 8th grade for more mental health support. It doesn't necessarily need to be a social worker, and that's something that as a leadership team we've been talking about, like what could that look like? We do have suggestions from the World Cafe data that does talk about different types of groups. So is it some type of group, or a lunch group, or a social work group, or a group that's headed by a trusted adult? So that's something we're still discussing. We acknowledge that if the kids are saying it, and what happens here, these are things that were repeatedly said. So obviously this has come up repeatedly. So it's something we want to make sure we're acknowledging and looking at how can we address. And then they'd also like more opportunities for open communication. And then things our 5th grade students want us to know, that 3rd question, They have opinions on the learning environment, from the temperature of the room to the availability of supplies. They care about fairness. They want more clubs and activities. They would like better food. They have specific suggestions for safety drills. They want to feel heard and supported, especially regarding bullying or social conflicts and mental health. They value the efforts made to welcome students, but they want to make sure it's extended to everybody. And they want the adults to understand their perspectives. So then at Hauser, students appreciate the friendly and fun teachers. They enjoy the variety of classes and activities, including encore and clubs. They appreciate the opportunity to socialize with their friends. They like the food, and they enjoy moving between classes. What they wish was different: they'd like longer lunch periods and passing periods. They wish there were breaks. They would like less homework, and they'd like less screen time. And where that comes up, or how that's mentioned, is that they feel all of their work is done through, the majority of the work is done through Schoology and on the computer, and they're saying that there were comments that they'd like to get back to using books. They feel that there are books in their room just collecting dust. That's not true, but that is what they feel. And so that's where that less screen time comes from. They have a dissatisfaction with certain facilities at Hauser, specifically the bathrooms and the locker rooms. There were, I think, just about every group had comments about the locker rooms and the gym and the bathrooms. They also dislike the use of SmartPass, and I like what April May had said when we were talking about this as a leadership team. She's like, they dislike it because it's working. For those that don't know what SmartPass is, it is a way students sign out to be able to go to the bathroom, or if they need to go to the office or something. So if I'm sitting in my class and I need to go to the bathroom, I ask, can I go to the bathroom? Yes, you can. I sign out. But if there are a lot of kids out at that time, a significant number, SmartPass is going to tell you you have to wait. You have a certain amount of time, and if you don't come back within that certain amount of time, SmartPass is going to let the staff know. So the kids are upset because, well, maybe I need more than 4 minutes to go to the bathroom. And I was listening in on many of the groups, and someone had said, like, I need more time because I want to stop at my locker and get a drink. And we're like, well, again, that's the purpose of SmartPass. You're not supposed to be doing all that. You were going to the bathroom. So they don't like SmartPass, but it's because it's working. They also feel there's some overcrowding in hallway traffic. In terms of our safe and welcoming environment, they appreciate the presence of friendly staff, the locked doors, the safety drills, the efforts by administration and staff to create a welcoming environment, and the availability of social workers and resource teachers at Hauser. How we could improve in their eyes: increase supervision, address bullying or social conflict in student behavior, improve cleanliness and condition of facilities. They'd like more inclusivity and a greater emphasis on listening to student voice. And what some of our junior high students would like us to know: they have opinions on the use of technology like Chromebooks and IXL. IXL, they don't like IXL. It's kind of like SmartPass. They don't like it, and that's their opinion, and they would like us not to use it. But our data shows it's working, so we're probably going to keep it. And then with Chromebooks, it's part of that's that technology of they feel they're on it a lot, and then part of it is they feel that the Chromebooks work slow. But to what Mr. Harvalis was saying when we were talking about World Cafe and the data, is that some of the kids who are complaining about Chromebooks are the same ones who don't take care of their Chromebooks. So yes, it's not working as effectively as you would like it to. Quit dropping it. While they like the food options, they would like some better food options. They want rules to be applied fairly and consistently. They want more freedom and choices, like being able to choose their seats, wear hats, and use their phones in the auditorium before school. And they also would like more mental health support. So what does all this mean? And what are we going to do with all this? We're going to explore the specifics aligned with our values and goals through conversations with our leadership teams. So we've started discussions with the district leadership team. We'll continue those discussions. We're looking at the values of equity and inclusion, collaboration and engagement specifically, but also just how it fits into our other values with our strategic plan. And then our building leaders will take it to their leadership teams to have further conversations with their individualized school data. And then when we start to talk about our upcoming strategic planning, because we know that this one is going to sunset shortly, when we talk about an upcoming strategic plan, this would be one of the data points to help it inform what we might address in that next strategic plan. So, thank you. And are there any World Cafe questions?
What's IXL?
IXL is an individualized math program at the junior high that we use. So we have iReady that we use for math at the elementary levels. Sixth and seventh graders use IXL, and then eighth graders and the advanced math students use ALEX, which is another individualized math program.
So you mentioned that there's a lot of mention in the survey from kids about bullying, and you're saying that's more social conflict. Didn't know if you could elaborate a little more on that.
I can. So bullying, the technical definition of bullying is something that's severe and pervasive. So something that is severe and happening over and over and over from the same person to the same person. We don't have bullying that's happening regularly in our schools, but we do have what we know as social conflict, which is where kids don't get along and kids are saying mean things, and those are the things we're addressing, or kids are doing mean things, and those are the things that we're addressing, but it's not bullying because it's not something that's happening repeatedly and severely to the same person, by the same person.
And
So
not
we
to
just
say
like
that it
to-
never has. I mean,
Right.
that just, bullying takes on a different definition than sort of the negative kid interactions, both of which I believe our staff's really good at dealing with and
Exactly.
addressing.
So I had a question about the mental health support. It seems to be another topic that was universal. I guess, can you elaborate on what seems to be what's, I guess, the driving force behind it? Is it like housing insecurity? Is it just social emotional issues? Is it?
From the comments from the groups, it sounds like it's social emotional issues, and also some of the social conflict. It sounds like it's maybe not feeling included. I know that one group said people like to hate me, so it's we need someone to be able to talk to when we're feeling upset or down, or when we're having a bad day. So I think it's more the social emotional, who can help me address these thoughts I'm having.
So is that, in regards to next steps, is that sort of falling under like how that might address like the future strategic plan? Is that what you're talking about? Or I guess, because I didn't see, just because it was so prevalent throughout I guess, what are the next steps for that?
We are talking as a leadership team about what that might look like. We've talked with the principals about how they might dig deeper into that, having different types of groups with students, trying to figure out where that's coming from, and then looking at how can we meet those needs. It's not necessarily hiring more social workers, or, I mean, if we need to, that's something I know Martha and Nora are constantly watching and looking at. But besides that being an option, being the solution, how can we address the students' mental needs in ways that can be done by any staff member, that you don't have to be a licensed social worker to address it. So, you know, some of the kids talked about, could we have different groups that might be able to have these discussions? So it might be something like looking at certain support groups that are held during lunch or held after school or something like that. We don't have the answers yet. It's something we're still discussing as a leadership team, but looking at what the specific needs are, and then who on our staff do we feel could work with that in the buildings. Would you add anything to that?
No, I think you said it really well. We had a really interesting conversation on the topic. I mean, it caught all the members of the leadership team kind of caught our eye. What do kids mean? Where does it take that licensed clinical professional? Or is it like I need somebody to talk to when I'm mad or when I didn't get along with my friend, or so it's really, I think it's going to require some more sorting out. We've talked about taking this back to our building leadership teams. We also have talked about somehow taking this back to kids, student councils, student leadership teams, how do we they gave us this really great feedback, and it's very real to them. Some pieces I think are probably universal about schools and ways that we try to improve schools, but making good sense of it and creating really actionable steps around it, because I think it's very relevant.
There was a group called Platypus a number of years ago. Is that still a
That
thing?
that group doesn't exist. That was like an after school kind of a book club, right?
I think so.
With Katie Maroney, if I recall.
Small group discussions,
Yeah.
supportive in that sense.
There's a peer mentor group. There is a group. There's a student leadership group. Different schools have sort of student councils or student leadership clubs. Actually, that's one of the goals that Family Community Partnerships had pointed out too. Is there a way that we could or should be aligning our student councils? And I wonder if there's something in this information that there's an interesting way to revisit this with children. you know, they said they liked having their voices heard, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we heard their voices, now how do we do something with it too? Not just, this was interesting, but we're
It's a
meant to do
start.
something with it, right? Yeah.
All right.
So, I'm sorry, one more question. So you mentioned under next steps, that you were gonna explore the specifics aligned, and you mentioned equity and inclusion. I didn't know, what does that mean, I guess?
Some of the things that came up were students don't feel that everybody is included into, whether it's friend groups or included in like some of those fairness pieces. So just looking at we have the values of equity, inclusion, collaboration, engagement, and so how do some of these things align with those values? And where, if anywhere, do we need to look at how can we better support in those areas?
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Angela.
Sorry, I'm now messing up my.
Mm-hmm. Next is you, Facility Advisory
It's
Committee.
facility. Sorry, I have now managed to completely.
I'm happy to share my agenda here
I
if
just
you're-
messed up my zooming on this document. And so next
You got it.
is
Oh,
indeed the Facilities Advisory. We discussed a number of items that you can see on the agenda, and I have to apologize. Don was mentioning the
This is the
technology item in our last Facilities Advisory, and that's where I was remembering it from. The grassy area at Ames continues to be a point of discussion. There was some consideration about what we could do temporarily, and any temporary fixes were going to cost as much as something permanent, so that's more of a summer project. We had talked about the IGA, and obviously that's been, for the most part, moved along to some good place. Technology, sorry, I'm looking at both my notes and the agenda. Like I said, the Blythe Park, that's now in a different spot, and we're working towards directing DLA to start thinking about a playground design. We have the summer projects that we know about and we voted on. And actually, a third of the discussion at the last facilities was the technology update. And there were some minor problems with the boiler at Blythe, and that's been fixed. It was a control unit. And the summer projects, just as a reminder, include the grassy area at Ames, the boiler at Ames as well, duck pointing here, at Hauser, the roof at Hollywood, and then the security. And then our next meeting is in about 2 weeks.
So for the Ames grassy area, that's part of the newer playground area, or what's?
That's part of the newer playground area. That's towards the back of the play area when looking from the street. And it was just a flat sodded area, and it doesn't have any drainage, so when it gets wet, the kids beat it up. And so the goal will be to provide additional drainage and then a kind of a wood chip surface that should get rid of the mud problem as well. Other questions? And then the next was the policy review cycle, which Stephanie would have engaged in, but as you know, early on, we talked about
Just a regular reminder to
this is really a reminder to review.
Section 5.
Thank you. This document is completely destroyed on my computer.
Mine's slowed up, but it is review Section 5. So this isn't a formal review or approval of new policies. This is the the periodic overview reminder that we all had agreed to.
Yes. And that ends our regular meeting. Do we still have?
Personnel? Is there any updates?
No.
Yeah.
No personnel updates.
Can you go to the agenda?
So, any additional public comment?
Do we have any additional public comment?
We do not.
All right. Is there still a willingness on the part of this group to go back into close, oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. That makes
Go into
sense.
closed session after, for half an hour?
For no action afterwards,
Yeah,
yes.
no, I'm getting
Yeah.
I'm taking the poll of is there still willingness to go into closed session?
Yeah.
I think we agreed on thumbs up, thumbs down.
Oh,
Yeah.
Thumbs up.
All right, this board will go into closed session after I say a couple more things. There will be no action taken. That will be to go into closed session to discuss compensation and of one or more groups of people. Same reasons as I spoke about earlier today. And our next group of meetings is April 16th, regular business meeting. That will be in Hauser. Then May 7th, that is the biennial organizational meeting to induct the new members, which includes a couple people here, and Stephanie and the new gentleman. And then May 21st is the next regular business meeting, also in Hauser. And that ends our open session.